Hey everybody, what's up? It's your boy MJ and welcome to the Black Wine Guy Experience. My guest today is one of America's most respected and celebrated restaurateurs, as well as the founder and inspiration behind the Myriad restaurant group and Crush Wine and Spirits, Drew Nieporent. Born and raised in Manhattan, which makes him a native New Yorker, Drew started down his road to restaurateur as a young man in the 1960s. He was already frequenting high-end restaurants when he was 5 to 6 years old. He went on to earn a degree from the School of Hotel Management at Cornell University while working on cruise ships. His first foray into restaurant management came in 1978, and by 1985, he had opened his first restaurant, Montrachet, which earned 3 stars from the New York Times and a coveted Michelin star, keeping its rating for decades. Drew formed his first of many celebrity partnerships in 1990 when he opened Tribeca Grill with Robert De Niro. The now New York City landmark restaurant attracted an all-star roster of investors, including Bill Murray, Sean Penn, and Mikhail Baryshnikov. Making 1994 a defining year and Nieporent's decades-long success story, he once again partnered with De Niro and renowned sushi chef Nobu Matsuhisa to open Nobu NYC, Door Nobu, and Nobu Fifty-Seven, all of which earned 3-star ratings from the New York Times. Nobu NYC was voted best restaurant in America by the James Beard Foundation. Later that year, Drew yet again cemented his place in history when he became one of the first bi-coastal restaurateurs, opening Rubicon in San Francisco with De Niro, Robin Williams, and Francis Ford Coppola. And of course, Myriad's excellence in wine service is widely acknowledged as it is the only restaurant group to earn 3 coveted grand awards from the Wine Spectator Magazine. In 2005, Myriad opened Crush Wine and Spirits, which was named the best new wine shop by Food and Wine magazine. And if that's not enough, Drew also donates his time to dozens of charities. Thank you for joining us, Drew. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'm sure as we get into it, we'll find some things.
Sounds good. And no, seriously, thank you for being here. I know we were kind of talking about, beforehand about your charity work and how busy you are, and like you even just missed a charity event because you're so busy doing charity work.
Well, it's like this podcast conflicts with the City Meals on Wheels event, which is at Restaurant Danielle. Not the new one, the one, what's it called? Le Pavillon.
Okay.
Actually, I can go to that now.
Yeah, you can go to that now.
I realize it's at 6 o'clock.
Exactly.
I might be able to make that.
We got
the other one I missed, but now I might be able to go to that.
Awesome.
One. Yeah.
So tell us what the wine you brought for us to drink this afternoon.
Well, I own a wine store on 57th Street between 3rd and Lex called Crush for many years now, and for me, the owning of that store is it's like going to a library. All the wines are displayed on the wall, and so I go in there and I peruse. And my wife likes Albarino, so this is I think it's 2016, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, no, 2018. I'm sorry, but it's delightful. It's like everything you want in a wine. It has nice acidity. It's full. It's flavorful. It's just like you enjoy it from the minute you taste it. And the tendency for me, anyway, is to drink less expensive wines. Although being in the restaurant business, my sommeliers are very fixated on selling the most expensive Burgundies and things like that. And wine has gotten very expensive. So, but I enjoy this wine specifically because it's it's really very friendly.
It's delightful. It's delightful. Yeah. So your fire for the restaurant business was lit early on. You started going to a variety of restaurants with your family at a very young age.
Well, my father was a lawyer for the State Liquor Authority. Oh. And in the early 60s, there was a lot of corruption. I won't say my father was corrupted, but my father had a way of taking the application from the bottom of the pile to the top of the pile. And those restaurateurs, they were right off the boat. I mean, this was a very seminal moment in New York for restaurants. These guys were all immigrants, and we wound up going to every kind of restaurant imaginable, whether it be, of course, Italian, French, German, Chinese, but really good places. And my father was a lovely person, and the restaurateurs, they loved my father, and we'd eat on the arm. We were eating for free, and it was like eating out, even though it was much less pricey. Back in the 60s, it still was for the very privileged.
Right.
So I was exposed to this. It's kind of like growing up with a piano in your house. I mean, it's like was right in front of me, and I was eating all this very delicious food, and I was like, I think I want to do this for the rest of my life, you know. So I made a decision pretty early on.
There was a New York Times article that said your family used to frequent a lot of German and Swiss restaurants,
Right.
amongst others.
Right.
And German and Swiss food aren't like the most celebrated in the city now, for sure. What was it like back then?
Well, I mean, you see, there was a place I remember on Lexington Avenue called Jensen's, and it was all these restaurants were like stages. They were like Broadway, sets, and the theater of it all was extraordinary. But then when you're eating, something, when you're young and you're eating like a potato salad or a Wiener Schnitzel or bratwurst or anything like that, I mean, all these things are unique. And, it was fantastic. And the reason there aren't a lot of restaurants like this right now are because those people don't exist anymore to go into business. The people will interpret that food, but the interpretation of that food is sometimes lackluster. Ironically, I mean, I opened a restaurant called Petard, which was it's in the same premise as Montrachet, which I opened in '85, and Corton, which I opened later. So I've had Petard for 7 years. The chef is Austrian. So he actually cooks that food, but he doesn't like to cook that food. He actually, was trained by Charlie Trotter. He worked in Eckhard Witzigmann in Germany. But anyway, the point is that I push him. So when we opened Petard, it was like, a French menu. Mm-hmm. And it was like, well, what about the Wiener Schnitzel? And he's like, look at me cross-eyed. So it was like an off-the-menu special. And it became the hottest dish on the menu because the waiters loved selling it. It was delicious. So, I mean, things work out like that. But, what I've noticed is, like, restaurants in general, like, the best Mexican restaurant in America is run by Rick Bayless. I mean, he's not even Mexican.
Yeah, I know, out in Chicago.
David Chang is Korean, but he's interpreting, a ramen situation. I mean, you could go all the way down the list that it's not necessary. I used to think it was.
Right.
Like, if I'm going to go to a Chinese restaurant, I don't want some white guy cooking me Chinese food. But, generally speaking, you get good food, even if it's sort of reworked.
Yeah.
What do they call that? Cultural appropriation or something like this?
Well, I don't know if that's
kind
called.
of
I mean, some people might, but I don't think that's called. I mean, that's cooking. That's cuisine.
Well, that is cooking.
But like, I mean, to your point, I mean, Bourdain famously once said, like, I don't need all these CIA graduates. Give me a dozen Mexicans in my kitchen.
Well, he's right.
It's can you do the job, right?
But like, I loved Anthony Bourdain, and we actually had a nice friendship. But Anthony Bourdain was the ultimate outsider who became, by dint of all the recognition and the media, he became an insider. I mean, he was slagging, Emerald, and I used to be with Anthony at these food festivals, and he was like dumping on everybody. Yeah. But then they all became his friends. You know what I'm saying? And he couldn't dump on them anymore. And Bobby Flay even came over to me one day, and he goes, "Can this guy cook?" I mean, I said, "Bobby, that's not the point. I mean, he can write." Yeah. He was a terrific writer, and he was good looking, and he was intriguing, and you can't dispute how great these shows are. Yeah. As a cook,
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that. Yeah, I mean, because I saw the Roadrunner movie and
yeah, the Roadrunner is
but like he's working the restaurant, but he's writing that book, right? And objectively, it's good to hear someone who knew him. Like to me, it does seem like he was a much better writer than chef.
Definitely,
and like he says he was tall. He had that hair,
His last name was Bourdain. Yeah. I mean, there was a famous chef of the Connaught, I believe, or the Savoy, one of those places in London at the time, whose last name was Bourdain. So, I mean, just the name alone was like almost royalty in a way, Anthony Bourdain. But he was right a lot of the times, but he would go to El Bulli early on, and he would say, I don't understand this food. He like that was one of the most honest telecasts, that he's eating this stuff and he really can't. He can't conceptualize it. Yeah. But then later on, it's like Ferran Adrià. He goes back and it's like he's the genius, and he is. But it took him a little time to figure that out. One time he called me up, Anthony Bourdain. We weren't even that. I mean, I didn't even know the guy, and he called me up. He said, "Listen, there's a bar in the subway." and can you bring some sushi? I'm doing a little get-together with friends. He didn't tell me he was filming anything around. So it was a bar called Siberia.
Okay.
In the 49th Street and 7th Avenue subway. Did you know about this place?
No.
You know about this? It's unbelievable. So you go down into the subway. I mean, nothing like this exists today probably. But you go down there, and it was like a bar. You know, and Jimmy Fallon was there, but Jimmy Fallon was, I guess, Saturday
He was on
Night
Saturday Night
Live
Live back then, yeah.
But like I brought the sushi, and the owner was a guy, Tracy, I forget his last name, but he was bizarre. And now when I see the thing, it aired, no reservations, I guess. It's like I asked my friends to come by, and it's like I met this guy for the first time that day, you know. And it's like so he was really he was on the outside, but he just, you know, and that's kind of what happens. Let's be honest about it. It's like the media just makes you larger than life.
Yeah, I mean, we see. You know. Influencers, for instance, there's people who, I mean, like it's I mean, Warhol, 15 Minutes of Fame is because of social media is seriously legitimate these days.
Oh, no question.
You know, but like with Bourdain, he was such a good writer, and you know, people like reclusive writers. People like, you know, people. Where's who wrote Catcher in the Rye? Salinger. Like, people want to know what happened to so and so, right? But what he did, because he was a New Yorker, he was out, so you know. The paparazzi probably started following him, that whole crazy life.
But there's also a thing where, and I've kind of realized this later in life, people want to be led. Not everybody. Like, you know, if somebody says this place has the best steak, you know, I'm just like, I'm not going to necessarily run there. but this is, you know, like
that's very true.
The 5 best, the 10 best.
Yep.
What's your best wine? Blah blah blah. You know,
Yep.
so it's like, you know. It's kind of crazy. And so, like the New York Times, I mean, I used to go nuts because they would rate our restaurants with stars.
Right.
And you know, there are people working there, everybody's livelihood is on the line. And the stars, like I benefited from the stars. I've gotten 3 stars in almost every restaurant that I've opened. But like, if you got a shitty review, you were like totally, you know,
yeah.
And so now, after the pandemic, guess what? There are no attaching stars. So now people literally, when you read the comments, they're like, well, am I supposed to go here? Like, they have to be led. They have to be told, okay, this is 3 stars, so you can go now.
Right.
If it was 1 star, but he writes everything good about it, and then there are those reviews where he's like this and that and this and that, and then people are like, am I supposed to go to this? You know, literally they ask this question. It's like, because they have to read the piece. Right. And they have to, like, that's the place. You didn't attach any stars to it.
Right.
But that's just,
well, and that's
current.
Yeah, and then that's the, you know, the blessing and the curse of the internet, like with Yelp, right? Like, so.
Oh, forget it.
Come on, exactly. So exactly.
I mean, listen, I live this every day. Like there's a 10 top. They wanted separate checks. So, and then one person was going to pay in cash, so it was taking a little bit of time. So the waiter brings the transaction back to the table, and somebody at the table made a smart-ass comment like, "Oh, we could have fucking," you know, like some. I wasn't there, so, but it was a smart-ass comment. So another waiter of mine, he was angry because they were like bitching on this waiter. Mm-hmm. So he waits for them to leave. It was 10 people, right. And he mumbled under his breath something like, "You're disgusting," you know, something like that. He claims he didn't do it, but he probably did it. But anyway,
yeah, I've worked at a restaurant. He probably did it.
So on not on Yelp, but on Open Table, they write, "This place sucks."
Right.
You know, we waited 45 minutes. And it's so totally out of context.
Right.
And if you call Open Table, because we pay Open Table, so you call and you say, "This is just not true, not accurately true," they'll debate with you. Like, "Oh no, those were diners. You know, we can't. You know, it's only if they." You know, there's like the criteria for removing a review is so stupid that, so you know, you learn to live with it. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, that's tough.
You do the one little thing wrong, you're screwed.
Yep.
You know,
yeah. No, I tell people, I'm like, listen, that's crowdsourced. I mean, what does that mean? It means like, okay, like, whose objective standard are we going by? Like, we, you know, like 1 + 1 is 2. Sorry. And even if you do it in algebraic in some point, it's still gonna, you know, right? We have, and just because you're mad, or tell people all the time, like with the wine, right? People want to, I don't care. I've said it before, Vivino. So Vivino, right? People rate wines. I'm like, so say I'm somebody who normally spends $15 for a bottle of wine. I decide to splurge, and I buy a $40 bottle of wine, and it's a Right Bank Bordeaux, and I wanted it to taste like a bulk California $15 Merlot, and it's too earthy, and it has tan, has all the stuff, and then you're gonna give it a 1 star, but varietally correct. That wine's varietally correct, but the person reviewing it doesn't know. And then also, they spend a little bit too much money in there. That's in the back of their mind, like, don't waste your money. So I tell people, you got to take all that with a grain of salt.
Well, I hate the reviews for wine because, first of all, they're ridiculous. I mean, I love Robert Parker. He's a friend of mine, but I mean, this one gets a 90 and this one gets a 92. What what's the difference in that? And nobody ever gets like a 60. Like nobody, Well, so it's always like in the 80s and 90s.
I think people like if you got a 60, you feel like
yeah, right.
You're just listening. Like I'd rather just sell my $6 bottle of wine instead of have anybody give it like a 72.
But the one good news about wine anyway is that we were a country. I mean, part of my success, quite frankly, in 1985 was I was working at all these French restaurants who had awful wine lists. They had, and then I opened Montrachet. I had no money. I had like $50,000 to build the restaurant. And I put this wine list together, 40 wines, and it's a serious list. It's like really well chosen, and you can just see the people. So now watch this. The first night, I got 1 bottle of Romani Conti Le Montrachet, and I probably paid like $75 for it back then. Today it would cost
oh my God,
maybe $1,000 or more. Okay, so the Le Montrachet, and so back then I wrote on the list INQ, inquire, because I didn't want to put a price down. Number one, I didn't want it to look expensive, and number two, I didn't want to sell it to some schmuck. So my garbage guy comes in, and my garbage guy goes, what are you going to drink? He's like, where's Montrachet? I want to drink a Montrachet. And it's like, oh, no. So, we bring him to the Montrachet, and I swear to God, he asked for ice to put in the glass. So, one of the great, I named the restaurant Montrachet because of how I thought it would translate to people who were interested in wine and
food and wine,
had some knowledge about that. So that was such a sobering moment, for me to for that to happen. But from the very tiny list at Montrachet, it grew into, 1,000 selection list because we were kind of like the first ones. Daniel Jonas, who now is, he worked for me for 20 years, but he's now working for Daniel Balut. He speaks fluent French. Yeah. He became friendly. He's an importer now. Yep. He became friendly with like the greatest winemakers in the world. But he took over the program, and you could just see like the interest in the people. So people weren't drinking wine in America, but then like slowly, and then it just, it exploded. And also California wines, because California wines were never given the respect until they had to earn the respect. That the California wines were as good as any wine in the world. And we, on our list, we put California wines and French wines, together. And believe it or not, that in 1985, that wasn't done. Maybe at the Four Seasons, but nowhere else.
Yeah. So let's back up. So when you were young, you had that wonderful experience because your dad's job. You got to go to a lot of restaurants. Was there like a standout restaurant for you when you were growing up?
Yeah, there were. Well, first of all, there was a place on 52nd and I guess it was 2nd Avenue called Café Argenteuil. And a young chef by the name of Maxime Ribera, he cooked there, and it was like the food was spectacular, the service was spectacular. And he went on to open, Max Auberge Argenteuil. He opened all these Argenteuil. Argenteuil, I think, is some weird, like, asparagus someplace. But anyway, that always left an impression. But there was a restaurant, I think it was on 47th Street, called Headquarters. It was the former chef of Dwight Eisenhower.
Okay.
Now, a guy is cooking for a general. How good can the food be? So what we just love this place because they used to have a guy walking around. You know how like at the stadium you have concessions that walk around with the hot dogs? Yeah. So he was walking around with that big thing of garlic bread. And for a little kid, it was like, oh my God, there's the garlic bread guy, come on over and we'd eat, But they had on the menu, they had this dish. It was called LBJ's Favorite. And it was the most disgusting thing you've ever seen. It was like crab and little tiny shrimps mixed together with Russian dressing. But for a kid, mayonnaise, Russian dress, Russian dressing on horse meat would taste good. So here again, it's like one time I read a review and it said, the LBJ's favorite at headquarters is the worst dish in the history of restaurants. But anyway, the owners there is a guy named Johnny Schwartz, was the chef, and Charlie Fodor. My father was friendly with these guys. They treated my brother and I just have a brother, they treated us so well. And I remember if you had a birthday, so they bring out your birthday with a sparkler. And they both come over and they go, if you can blow out the sparkler, you own the restaurant. And of course, that didn't happen. But I mean, that one stands out. But I mean, there was San Marino, San Marco, unbelievable Italian restaurants. My mother said, you cannot eat sauce like you eat soup. Like you can't use your spoon to, I don't know where she got that from. So every time the spoon was like near me and there was a sauce that I wanted to lap up,
Jones into
I wouldn't do it, And then there was a place actually right close here, 38th Street in Lexington called Tom's Shangri-La. The old Chinese restaurants outside of Chinatown, they overserved you because most of the clientele was Jewish.
Okay.
And the Jews like a lot of service. And so, but my father was weird. It's like when we ordered the food, he wanted one thing at a time. But it's like you're slapping the hand, because they come out and they want to put, blah, 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 4 things on the plate. And my father, he would try to explain, can we do one at a time? And they were like, nothing, But I mean, there were so many places like this. There was a place on 34th and Madison called The Empire, Sui Ham. And the guy didn't speak a lick of English, but somehow, he fed us like kings. And it was just, it was a funny thing. I went to Stuyvesant High School.
Okay.
So Stuyvesant High School is for very smart people. I don't know how I got in there because I was like 5.
Well, I read your bio. I think,
but I was like 500 in a class of 700, something like this. But one day my mother, she goes like this. She goes, Willie Weisberg's mother said, Cornell has a hotel school. And I go, Mom, Cornell is Ivy League. I ain't getting into Cornell. And she's like, well, he's not going to use the application. Let's apply.
Oh my God! See, this is that's right. Because
it was totally fortuitous.
I mean, I still have paper applications. I used to work with kids, and they do everything online now. But
online?
you had a coveted Cornell application. Let's not waste it.
Dig this: the state universities were all $5. Cornell's was 20, and my father got pissed off at me for the $20 that it cost to apply. And then when I got in, he was furious because he was trying to figure out there's state-funded schools up at Cornell, like the Ag School or Human Ecology. Yep. And he's like, well, maybe you can go to those schools, pay that tuition, and take classes in hotel school. And it's like, no, and you know what the tuition was back then? $5,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's
$5,000.
Like
it's like 60 now.
And that's just the tuition.
Yeah, yeah, right. But dude, you're looking at somebody who grew up in New York City when pizza was a nickel.
Yeah,
and it was good. It was delicious. And when one day we walked into the pizza place and there was a sign that said, "Due to the rising prices of olive oil and tomatoes, we have to raise the price to a dime." And it's like, well, that's okay. I mean, like now, it's like I don't know if you like artichoke pizza, but I have.
I don't know if I've had one.
It's over on 12th Avenue. And something.
Okay.
But what they were known for was they were charging $5 for a slice. Like this is like, I don't know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago.
That's a lot.
So they were at an event. I was just at a food and wine event, and they had the pizza out. And I go over to them. I said, "Is the pizza still $5?" And they go like this, $7. So a slice of pizza is $7.
That's crazy.
And it was a nickel when I was a kid.
That is crazy. Yeah. I know. And
by the way, and it's the same thing with wine.
Yeah.
I mean, on my original list at Montrachet, Pullini Montrachet, $34. And I made money charging $34. Now you couldn't find a half bottle of Bourgogne Blanc for $34.
No, I had John Capon on. He was telling how his dad, like you were getting cases of Petrus for like $150. And it was like no one wanted the wines.
Can I tell you something? So I worked at La Grenouille, and all these French restaurants, they bought tremendous amounts of Bordeaux. That was the whole thing. And then they stored them in a room that would be like 105 degrees in the summertime. So there were many occasions. Now, this was like 1984. A guy goes like this. I swear to God, He says, I want a bottle of Cristal to start. I forget the white wine he was ordering. And he goes, and I want a bottle of Chateau Margaux. 61. So on the list at La Grenouille was $700. This is 1984. But that was a crazy amount of money. So I bring the list over to the guy, and I point to the 61. I said, the Mouton Rothschild is also $700. And the guy goes, no, I want the Margaux. So I was like, okay, all right. So then, and he goes, and I want, I think it was something crazy. It's like, I want Chateau Yquem for dessert, something like that. Okay,
gotcha.
He's ordered like the greatest wines in the world. The food comes out like this, right? So, I decant the Margaux. I pour him a glass, taste it. Food comes out, he starts eating, and then he calls me over like this. He goes, listen, I'm not saying the wine is bad, but is there somebody here who's like an expert? No, there was no sommelier.
Right, I know, that's another thing too.
And the head waiter was from Brittany, where they don't even know about wine in
cider.
France. Yeah, right, exactly. So he comes over and is like, yeah. He spoke with a falsetto voice, and he goes, no, it's good, everything's good. So this guy finishes his entree. I have a decanter like this, almost full. And the soufflés, La Grenouille was famous for soufflés. The soufflés are coming out. I said, sir, what would you like me to do with the red wine? He says, you can take it. So now I'm like, holy shit, I got Chateau Margaux, 61. I go in the kitchen. I was like, hey, guys, come on over, take a glass. And everyone takes a glass, and the wine was dead.
Ugh.
Because they
well, yeah, I mean, it was 100 degrees.
It was unbelievable. But this guy's paying $700 back then for like, and so I got into the wine business with these kinds of experiences, knowing that like if I'm going to sell something, first of all, I've always been, every restaurant I've ever had, maybe not Nobu, but most of my restaurants are very price sensitive. And with the wine, especially now, you look at a wine list in most restaurants now, the cheapest bottle is $80.
Yep.
I mean, I always, like, I had lists in 40, under 40, under 40, and then it was 50, under 50, and my sommeliers, they always want to sell the most expensive stuff. And unfortunately, that's what, because the people, they go crazy. Like the other day, I sold, like Romany Saint Vivant and, something else. Our wine sales were like $20,000. I mean, a couple of bottles like that, boom,
Yeah,
But,
yeah. I mean, that's crazy. So what was your first restaurant gig that you ever had?
Well, the first time, the first thing I ever did was I was a quarter-pound grill man at McDonald's, 1972. When I was at Stuyvesant, I went to work at McDonald's, and that was a great experience.
You should contact them. They should pay you to do a commercial.
No, I'm in their book.
Like, I mean, because they had that commercial. I was saying about Calvin. Remember Calvin, the black kid, the commercial? Who they like? I don't know about Calvin's. Calvin doesn't have all the restaurants you have.
They have tremendous commercials, by the way.
Yeah,
but I I'm in their book.
Okay.
Like I don't know if it's a. Maybe it's just a book, but there's some interesting people who worked at McDonald's.
Yeah.
Jay Leno and Andy McDowell and everything. But believe it or not, I do the hamburgers today at Madison Square Garden. And if you have been to Billy Joe or a Knick game or a Ranger game, I'm actually the last man standing. When they brought us in like 10 years ago, I was with Andrew Carmelini, I was with John George von Gerichten, the Carnegie Deli. All those guys are gone. I'm still there, and I was there last night because it was the opening night for the Knicks, and the burger's great. I mean, honestly,
this is good to know.
Yeah, the one thing I believe in about life is that if you learn something, then if you can do something later in life. So when Madison Square Garden, I'm on their charity. I'm a director on the Garden of Dreams for a long time now. But the point is. They called me up and they said, listen, you're not a chef, but we want you to do, we're transforming the gardens. We're spending $1 billion. We want you to do something. What would you like to do? And I said, chicken Parmesan sandwich. I said, okay, great. Then they called me back and said, you're doing the hamburger. I was like, whoa. I said, I worked at McDonald's in 1972. I'm not making hamburgers. He says, no, that's all we have left. And I was like, you have the worst hamburger in the history of life at Madison Square Garden right now. So in a way, it was a challenge. And then I sat down and I said, you know what? I'm gonna do something really well. And then I broke it down: the bun, the meat, the sauces. But what was the one thing that screwed everything up? You had to have a person cooking the meat. And at McDonald's, even though it was frozen, you put frozen meat down on a griddle, flat top griddle, by the way, and then you put these stupid planks on it, because it was frozen. So now it's greasy and wet on the grill. And then when the sound went off to turn them, like you weren't just turning them because you were feeling the meat or somebody. Right. Anyway, the point is, I was like, I can't let somebody cook this meat. So I found this unbelievable piece of equipment called a Nikkei conveyor belt. It broils like this, up and down, 17 burgers in 4 minutes. It toasts the buns on the bottom of this unit while the meat's cooking. The meat comes out like perfect, medium rare, and then we wrap it in this incredible wrapper, and we put it on a hot plate, and it stays hot and delicious. And it's been there in excess of 10 years now, and it is excellent. It's called the Daily Burger by Drew Nieporent. They called these things signatures, so it was like my signature, John George. Well, nobody gets that, but it's just a great burger. And this is why this is why everybody's like, they're gaga, they're crazy over Shake Shack. Yeah, which is fine. Right. I mean, that's fine. Right. But like, there's not even a comparison, to be honest. But nobody knows.
I gotta go to a
well, now that they're letting people back into the garden. Yeah. No, I have 4 concessions in the building. And my picture's up there. You can't miss me. So you'll see it. And which is weird because, like, as the owner of all these restaurants, Michelin star restaurants, Nobu, whatever, when I'm in an airport, people come up to me and I'm like a little skittish, and they go, "Are you doing the porn?" I go, like, okay. And they go, "Your hamburger at Madison Square Garden." It's like, I mean, it's nuts, but people see that.
That's cool. No, I love a good burger, and man, I could go on. We could have the show could be about burgers.
Yes, yes, it could be.
Like I love, for me, I lived in California for 10 years, and so I love In-N-Out Burger because I think for $3 it's hard to get a better burger. And then I hear people on the East Coast like, oh no, Shake Shack, and then Shake Shack's good, but I'm like, you don't get. First of all, it's a family-owned business, it's fresh meat, it's something ridiculous like 63.26. 60 is really high fat content, and it's $3 for a double burger.
Yeah, price is important too.
Yeah, price. I mean, people don't factor all these things in, man.
You and Thomas Keller. Thomas Keller, he lives, and actually Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah, no.
Anthony Bourdain.
Every time I go to LA, first thing I do is get off the plane and I go to In-N-Out.
There it is. Well, there is one close to the airport.
Yeah, it's right here. So the New York Times released an article about you, and it was titled "One of the Last Old School Restaurateurs Standing." What does old school restaurateur mean to you?
I mean, I take that with a grain of salt. Of course, I'm old school because I do things, old school should mean doing things properly.
Yeah, doing things right.
Yeah, and it also should mean that, like, you had a training. Like you didn't just fly in from some other profession, put money down, and open a restaurant. A real restaurateur, I basically, when I was 18, I worked on the MS Vista Fjord and the MS Saga Fjord. These were first-class cruise liners as a waiter, selling to Russia and Baltic Sea, and and then 600 passengers. You work 7 days a week, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I mean, I managed Tavern on the Green during its heyday in the 80s. There was also a restaurant called Maxwell's Plum, which I think predates you. Okay. But it was one of the most magnificent restaurants in New York. It was kind of had its run in the 60s and early 70s. And on 250 seats, we used to serve almost 1,000 people a night. I mean, it was just, and it had a menu, like extraordinary menu. And then Warner Leroy, who owned Maxwell's Plum, he opened the Tavern on the Green, and so they recruited me to go over there. And then it was like a proving grounds. I mean, like, I had about 150 staff that I had to manage, and we did like 35 million back in the early 80s. So, but Warner was a little like George Steinbrenner. It's like he couldn't sit still with anything. He opened the Russian Tea Room, disaster. I mean, and he got together with David Boulay, who was my first chef at Montrachet, who I had my own issues with, but he's a great cook. But he, Warner Leroy, casting David Boulay in anything, it was not going to work. And, but Boulay, like, there's a guy. He was on the cover of New York Times Magazine. He was, and who cares? Like, does anybody really care? This current day and age, I mean, it's like, it's a jumble now. COVID's created a lot of difficulty, no doubt. But
yeah, but I think to your point, I mean, like you said, I respect people doing their thing. But the rise of the pop up, it's like I make this good and I'll do a pop up and then I do a food truck, and sadly though, because you don't have the training, then when they try and go to brick and mortar, it often falls.
It never works.
It falls apart. I mean, it's hard for someone like you to open a restaurant, right? Like it was successful, but
I opened my first restaurant when I was 29. I'm 66. That was 36 years ago. It's still there. Tribeca Grill is 31 years. It's still there. Nobu's 27 years. It's still there. And there's like 50 of them around the world. So my story, when you say old school, is like, the proof's in the pudding. All my places are like, they stood the test of time, which nobody, look, when I was younger, it was like, oh, wow, if you get to be like 21 Club or the Four Seasons or the Rainbow Room, oh, man, that's like an institution. Now it's like, oh, it's old, it's faded, it's,
Yeah,
It is.
You know what? This is a good point. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with more of Drew Nieporent. Okay, we're back. So I'm loving this conversation. I love everybody. I love the stories.
I do know that.
Interest in wine. Did that develop alongside the food with you? How did your interest in wine come about?
I think my entire career is based on seeing how badly restaurants either cook food or purvey wines, and saying to myself, if I ever open my own place, I can do a much better job, and I can do it cheaper. A little like Crazy Eddie philosophy. I won't be undersold. So I opened my first restaurant. David Boulay was cooking. The food was magnificent. I charged $16 for 3 courses. $16.
Wow.
I told you before, Pauline Montrachet was $34. Yep. I mean, I saw in the restaurants just poor wine programs. They did not promote wine. Wine was very intimidating. People didn't understand wine. They didn't understand the wines from different countries, let alone, American wines are named after the grape, and French wines are named after the village or the chateau, or basic stuff. So I just said, okay, I'm going to make this really simple. And then I got very cool people, very convivial, very hospitable people to carry out my mission. And somebody like. It's hard to think this way, but no restaurant, none, had sommeliers in New York City. Nothing.
Yeah.
And then then there was like wine directors, and then, so that gave them a little status. And then I start seeing where the bartenders are now being called bar chefs, and the bar thing hasn't really formed that much, but there is a community.
Mixologists
And everything. But it's like how can you? How many drinks can you put bitters into? It's everything has,
right.
And you go to these events now, and it's like there's Tito's, right?
Yep.
Tito's vodka, and you go, I just would like a Tito's on the rocks, and they go, oh no, we can't do that. It's got to be in the drink, and it's like, does the Tito suck, and you have to cover it up with all this crap? It's like so. And the other thing about mixed drinks is like, so there's 2 bartenders, right? And you order whatever the cocktail is, and then it's like it takes 5 minutes to get a drink. It's like just put the bottle there, put some ice, and I can have my Tito's on the fucking rocks. It's like anyway. But the wine is still we're still in a learning process.
Yeah.
And now the problem is that all these restaurants feel that you need this huge wine list. But like when you go out for dinner, whether it's 2, 4, you're not going to order that many bottles of wine. So this is an ego thing. And, even myself at Tribeca Grill, we have a grand award, and, we have like $1 million worth of wine. It's way too much, way, way, way too much. So my philosophy now, I would love to be able to cultivate a list with less, pricey wines and food less pricey. But guess what? The landlords aren't cooperating. They're not lowering my rent.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like if I don't want to make any money, that's cool. I can do that.
Right.
So what I realized, like even at Batard, we had a $79 prefix. Okay, $79 3 courses. Guess what? When the restaurant was Cortone in 2005, the price was $79. I didn't raise my price for 16 years. So it's and I'm lucky because I can control my costs and I know how to do business. But the point is, I've always given a fair price. But now it's like 11 Madison, $335, Saga, $295. I mean, it's like, this is nuts. This is more expensive than going to a Broadway show. I mean, it's
yeah.
And I didn't realize maybe there are that many customers out there. I don't know.
I don't know.
My wine store, dude, my wine store. The numbers are sick. They are. And we've had the store for 15 years.
We'll get back. I want to get back to. I want to hear about that.
Yeah.
We need to get you in where I live in Jersey, man, because there's a decent amount of money, but the restaurants all freaking suck, man. You can come down there and kill it. I'm down in Monmouth County, seriously, where Bruce and Bon Jovi live.
Right. Well, things are getting slightly better.
Yeah, but
are you near Long Branch?
I grew up in Long Branch.
Okay, because one of my ex guys has a restaurant called, I think it's called Osteria Trauma or Trauma.
Yeah, I know Trauma. I've been to Trauma.
Yeah,
it's decent.
It's decent.
It's decent. It's really for where we are. It's really good. But because I've lived in New York, California, it's decent. But for Monmouth County, it's really good.
Well, but
that's it's objective. I'm being honest.
Cooking is like sports. In other words, to be a cook, you have to be almost like an athlete.
Yep.
Now that Pat Trauma was my chef in Della Famita in '93, I think it was.
Okay.
So that's like what 30 years ago.
Yeah, 30 years ago.
I mean, it's nuts.
Yeah.
So any kind of food, you have the right outlook. It's like better than the most. That kind of thing.
Yeah. So, you got this thing where like celebrities want to do business with you. How did you become to be the guy to go to a restaurant with? We were like with De Niro, and then, I mean, maybe it's the first domino, but like it's impressive who a lot of your partners have been. How did that come about?
Well, when we opened Montrachet got 3 stars in the New York Times 7 weeks after we opened, and it was kind of a cause célèbre. It was like a big deal because we were so inexpensive. Tribeca was kind of a new territory, and De Niro would come in. But unbeknownst to me, De Niro's like assistant would make reservations at Chanterelle and over here and over there, and then at the last minute he'd decide where he wants to go. Now he was dating a black girl by the name of Tookie Smith.
Very famous relationship of his. Yes.
Okay, so Willie Smith, the designer, who died unfortunately of AIDS, that Tookie was his sister.
Yep.
Terrific girl. And one night she goes, Bob wants to know if you want to open another restaurant in Tribeca. And I was like, "Are you talking to me?" Because there's nobody. I mean, I was like,
he did the old famous line, "You talking to me?"
Yeah, exactly. No, you have to understand. De Niro was like very cryptic. He would sit in the back, his back to the room, and Tookie was very vivacious, very outgoing. So we walk up the block, and he shows me this like cavernous space, and I'm like looking at him, and I'm like, "Well, what do you want to do here?" And he can't come up with, he doesn't know what to say. I said, "Well, like La Coupeau in France." He goes, "Yeah, like La Coupeau." So we went about, and that's 31 years ago. He brought in Sean Penn, Bill Murray, and back then, I mean, those guys had profile, but Sean Penn and Bill Murray are like enormous now, and even Russell Simmons, has had his own little trials and tribulations, but there was about 20 investors. And, then I started getting calls and things like that. And then, look, you could be a partner with John Doe or you can be a partner with Robert De Niro. It's better to be a partner with Robert De Niro.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, man.
Look, I believe when you open a restaurant, you have to stack the deck. And what do I mean by that? The food's got to be good. The beverage has got to be good. The service got to be good. But it doesn't hurt to have, like, notoriety so that the press latches onto it.
Hey, listen. I mean, that's what... Again, the pluses and social media on steroids, right? I mean, that's like you want that push. It's like PR. People want to be seen. It's like it's a scene, right? Especially in like New York, San Francisco, like the big cities.
Right.
It sets the tone.
Well, back like in the day, okay, Planet Hollywood. That was like a joke.
Oh my God!
Because it was like Stallone, Bruce Willis, and
Schwarzenegger,
and it's like. But the place sucked. I mean, it was just terrible.
Yeah.
So we were opening right around that time, and it was like, are we going to be like that? So Mimi Sheridan was the food critic for the New York Times in the 70s. Very tough, very difficult. And she comes in and she says, the food's better than the owners. And it's like, she gave us like credibility. And we were reviewed at the time. The food critic was a guy named Brian Miller. he gave us a review of 2 stars. That was the last time we got reviewed, 31 years ago. But we're still open, you know? So it's an amazing story. But like I said, there's no benefit to that, unfortunately. Like the years in business used to be a plus. Now it's like
it's interesting.
People want to try the new.
Right.
The
Everyone wants the new, unproven thing, which is really odd to me. I mean, and you know, with wines, like, you know, I love California wines, but to something you said earlier about like, or is someone just have a lot of money and slapping their name on a winery? We see that so much now, particularly in Napa Valley. And you know, you got 5 guys who are making the wines for everybody, and they're all selling for $300 to $400. You know, 5 out the gate, first vintage, no track record, and then like I'll have like an old Heights Martins. I'm like, fuck, like we forget about Heights and Groth and all these people who've been making wine for so long and have the contracts, but we get caught up in this shiny new nickel thing, you know, shiny new object. So you touched on this earlier. I want to go back to this. Rubicon, Montrachet, Tribeca Grill have all earned grand awards from the Wine Spectator. And you also said something about, you know, we have too much wine. But, like, what does it take? Like I think people don't understand, like, how hard it is to earn those because you have to have a lot. You have to have a lot to invest in wines that you might not sell, right? Is that correct?
Well, look, the Wine Spectator is so successful. Marvin Jenkins, you know, genius about not only that magazine, Cigar Aficionado, Market Watch. The thing was, you know, we got caught up in it. It was like that's what you did back then. You wanted to get that award. You wanted to get the grand award. So there's only 80 in the world because it's they give it around the world. So to have 3, is that ridiculous?
That's bananas.
Yeah, but now it's like, you know, I think we'll sell very expensive wine, and and the fact is, at the time when I was being pushed, oh, we should do this, I was like, no, I wasn't a believer. But I've become a believer. I mean, there is a market where people have a lot of wealth, and they invest in wines too. Wines are actually a pretty healthy investment. All these auctions and things like that.
Oh yeah,
tremendous.
no, it's so good that
John Capon. I mean, come on. I mean,
but even now, like on my Instagram, I get an ad like these young analysts are trying to put together these wine index funds. I mean, it's real. Like it's. Because there's a limited supply, right?
You've had Kevin Zraly.
Yes.
You interviewed Kevin Zraly. He's one of the nicest guys. And you know,
my God, yes.
I was a captain at Plaza Athénée, French restaurant that was there, and he was having lunch. And he says, "You want to take my class?" And I go, "Absolutely." And you know, but we knew each other for a long time before, and we stayed friendly. The point is that his approach is I ascribe to that. I think he's got the right. He's not pretentious. You know, after all these years, he's still in the game.
Yep.
His book is still vital. Still a good book.
Listen, so how many guests like will come on and like that's the book, right? Like we have all these new wine books. Again, props to people who are doing their things, but like, you know, there was this American business philosopher, his name was Jim Rohn. He's like, everything you need to know about success has already been written. Like, so like a lot of stuff is just like, I'm going to go off on this tangent of this one part, but it's all in these like seminal books, like The Windows on the World course. Like, and like you said, I had the opportunity to watch him teach one of his classes. And like, I was like, he's a genius. Cause it was so, like how he explained tannin, right? Like it was so simple to me. Like, I was like, oh my God, I wish I had thought of that. Like, he just makes it simple so people can enjoy it.
And he's timeless. You know, he's been around forever.
I mean, I was thinking about, you have 3, so I was trying to do the percentage of all the awards in the world, but like it's ridiculous. I mean, no one else has. You got 3 of them. That's just crazy. Yeah. There's only 80. So, what was? How did Crush come about?
Crush is interesting because my lifelong friend of mine, we grew up together. He was a collector.
Okay.
And he had a little bit of money. He had a real estate guy, friend of his, who had a lot of money. And, you know, I had made some money, so we put our money together. He had a collectible store called Gotta Have It, literally right next to where we're going to put Crush. And very, very successful collectible store. So he had a relationship with the landlord, got a pretty good deal. Space wasn't that big, and with no basement, none. And we move in there, and we got a little piece in the New York Times, Crane's business also, and we just took off. And now we have a warehouse in Long Island City, which is it's huge, and we deliver and all that kind of stuff. But we do the numbers are massive. I mean, it's just like I can't. We set out maybe we'll do $3 to $5 million. We do like 4 or 5 times that amount. I mean, it's extraordinary, and we've sustained it. And during COVID,
yeah,
I mean, we were closed. The store was closed, but we still did all our business over the phone.
You do deliveries, and you have them online. And
yes. And these guys, they have customers who, like, when the Rousseau comes in and all the high-end stuff comes in, which they can't get, boom.
Yeah, because I worked at, most of the shops I worked at were like that. Like people don't get it's a professional. Like you build a book. like you have customers who are like, oh, if you like this Rousseau though, we got this other new domain coming in, and like, all right, give me a case. Like how is it that where'd you find how'd your team come together there? I mean, to put basically I'm the black one. Like you got a bunch of wine guys working there.
Yeah, it did take a little bit of time.
Wine people, so I don't get canceled.
There you go. No, it took some time, but our general manager is a guy named Ian McFadden. He's terrific. And we have people who are like, they're people who are responsible for spirits and liquor. They're people who are responsible for German wines. Have their customers, and we broke it down like that, and we pay people very well. And it's a totally different business than the restaurant business. Like in the restaurant business, like we have our expenses are really rent, food cost, and payroll. In this thing, obviously, the cost of the wine is substantial, and the payroll is substantial, but it's not quite the same when you're doing this massive number. So it sort of pales in that respect. And you could be very profitable with wine. I mean, it's just extraordinary. I mean, I've invested in very few things, and I put over $1 million into the store back in, I think it was 2005 or 6, and I've done fantastic.
Nice. Now, I mean, so you're a businessman, so you have lots.
Not really. No, like you asked me that old school question.
Yeah.
So the old school is that I for a while I didn't even have an office. I mean, I would just put a table out front. I swear to God. Yeah. And this is before cell phones, so I'd snake the phone outside and put it on a chair, and it's like, the world has caught up with me. It's like you can't operate the way I operated, because basically it was like, this was my philosophy. If I do the right thing, I'm going to make money. And I swear to God, I never looked at a balance sheet. I never looked at a P&L statement. I never did a budget, and I always made money.
You're fortunate, because that is you're but you're a little bit older than me, but you could get now it's like people first thing well, you know how to read a P&L, blah blah blah. And I love what your philosophy is like. If I do right by people, I'm going to make money.
But I'll tell you what, when the tide started changing, and I opened the restaurant Rubicon in San Francisco. I was like, why is our payroll $100,000 a year more in San Francisco? And you know what they said to me? Because the government, the minimum wage is I think now it's more than $15 an hour, but back then it was like 12 or something, and in New York it was 2.
Yeah.
So now if you're paying $100,000, like I was trying to operate, Rubicon like Montrachet, when you're paying $100,000 more just for waiters because of the way it is, and you didn't research that, or nobody tapped you on the shoulder. Okay, then we had bought the property in San Francisco.
Okay.
So the people we sold it to, instead of locking in at a price, they started charging me like $30,000 a month rent. I don't pay $30,000 a month rent, so I couldn't. Now my overhead is stupid, and it just didn't work out. So, but on the occasion where you realize it's hard to make money, is when you're not sort of like patrolling, making people come in at a correct food course, or watch the payroll. I mean, you have to dot every I and cross every T now.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't mess around. Like when I had Montrachet, I said, I'm not going to have a time clock. He said, why don't you want a time clock? I said, because if people are late and they punch the clock, what are we going to do? We're gonna penalize them? I said, we're just going to have the honor system. They're going to sign in. Right. You can't get away with that now. There's no way.
No,
it's like to the penny.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's just little stuff like that.
What was it like working with Robin Williams? Did you obviously must have at least a meal or two with him?
I would say of everybody, of all the celebrities I've met, he was probably the most Hamish, the nicest one. I mean, he come to town. First of all, his wife would call me up when they would travel to France and say, where should we go? And I'd always give him places to go. But when he'd come to town, he'd invite me to, if he was performing at Carnegie Hall and the after parties. He just was very inclusive. And he wasn't afraid of charity. He would when somebody asked him to do a charity, he'd show up at Rubicon and have dinner with these people. It was fantastic. And I have a video when I turned, I think it's when I turned 50, he and Francis actually filmed a happy birthday salute to me, which is like priceless, but it's like, and Robin's, improving, and he did it twice, and it's like it's one of these great tapes.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So, I like what you said about, because Food Network, love it or hate it. Like I watch different shows, like I watch Bar Rescue from time to time. Yeah. Same thing as The Numbers, and then Robert Irvine. Like, what would if you were going to open a restaurant today? Like, what would be like your what would be the first thing you'd be looking at?
Well, whenever I conceptualize a restaurant, there's only two reasons why you'd open a restaurant. One is that you have to showcase talent. Okay. So if you have a really talented chef or a really talented beverage person or something, so that would be a reason. Or it could be like you're going to do something that nobody else has done in New York City. Like you're going to open something like that's one of a kind, very interesting. That's why you'll never find me in a mall or do something. So with Nobu, when you think about the success of Nobu, Nobu is really probably the greatest success story in America restaurant business. Like I would say in this century.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Talk about how that was conceived.
Well, think about it. It's like in New York City, all the Japanese restaurants were for the Japanese. Yeah. I mean, they had sushi screens, they had tatami rooms. Nobody even understood them, and the Japanese did not want us coming to their restaurants. They were very happy serving their own people, and that was the way it was. Right. So I see Nobu. He's got this little sushi bar in La Cienega. And I go there and it's like, he's so charismatic, he's so friendly, and De Niro is like, he loves this guy, to the point when we were going to open the Tribeca Grill, he says, I got a chef for the Tribeca Grill. I said, Bob, who are you thinking about? Oh, Nobu Matsuhisa. I was like, we're not going to use a Japanese chef. But I didn't say that to him. But I'm like, but I bring in Nobu. We flew in Nobu, and I meet Nobu, and but I knew him. And I once took a huge party of chefs to Matsuhisa, but I see the kinship between De Niro and Nobu, and I was like, I'm going to make this thing happen. And then you're going to have to read my book or come to my movie premiere, whatever that is. Hopefully it's not going to be like when I'm dead. But it's a great story. It's a tremendous story. But on my gravestone, it's going to say, Drew Nieporent, the man who brought Japanese food to America. Because if it wasn't for me, I don't care what anybody says. If it wasn't for me, Nobu would never have happened. Yeah. It's a long story. I can't get into it now. Even Morimoto worked for us. Okay. And Morimoto has tremendous success with the Iron Chef. Yeah, okay. And his own restaurants and everything. Right. And there's so many son of Nobu style restaurants. But I'll say this, the Nobu that we opened in 1994, and you draw the line to the Nobu today, which I just had lunch in, is exactly the same. And most of the time it's like, wow, there's no innovation, there's no creativity. What's up with that? No. It was so creative, and it's still so creative because the simplicity. It's all about simplicity And if you do something with pristine products, like the fish that we buy, the sauces that we use, and the precision, and a lot of cooking is precision. Precision is very important in cooking. And so can you imagine 27 years later, we're doing like 500 dinners a night at Nobu 57. We do like tremendous numbers. It's just unbelievable. And at lunch today we had 250.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
I mean, when people...
And it's expensive.
I know. I mean, I think you make so many good points. I mean, people want to try this new thing, but like, you don't understand what it takes to be on top that long and to stay in business that long. Like literally, I love it. Like sports analogy, right? So like, listen, man, until you master the basics, don't be trying any fancy tricks, right? And like, some of my best meals, like, it's like 5 ingredients, just the right 5 ingredients in the right amount. At least precision. I love that word, precision.
Right.
Which, when you're serving blowfish and can kill people, you better be pretty precise, right?
That's true. It's 100%. It's like I'm very into sports.
Okay.
So because of my hamburgers, I can walk into Madison Square Garden. I have a credential. So it's opening day. So when they announced the Boston Celtics, I was like, who are these guys?
I know. I feel this. Listen, we're not old, but I remember like the NBA was like Dr. J.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this guy, who's this guy's a superstar now? I didn't even like.
Well, but can I tell you something? Like the game starts, the Knicks went up 8-0.
Okay.
And then like 2 minutes later, it was 11-8. Like they scored 11 straight points, and then the game went into double overtime. There's a kid named Jalen. What the hell's his last name? Jalen Lee or Jalen something.
No.
Rose?
Rose is an announcer, no.
No.
Jalen Rose played for Michigan. See, I know him. He's old school.
I can't believe I can't remember the name. He scored 49 last night.
Wow.
But in the first quarter, he had 25.
Ugh.
He could not miss.
He cooled off.
But he was tremendous.
Yeah.
But and he was a very cool guy. And like I hate Boston, sports because I'm a New Yorker.
I know you're a New Yorker.
But I can't believe how much better they are. And obviously the baseball team has killed us every year. But I'm gonna enjoy watching the Celtics because they were so good and they were shooting 3-pointers. They had like 66%.
Do you mean the Knicks? I'll help you out here. Do you mean you're gonna enjoy watching the Knicks, or you're gonna enjoy watching the Celtics?
The Knicks are unga patch. I love Knicks fans because every year they're like Met fans. It's like this is going to be the year.
Yeah,
it hasn't been the year for 20 years.
I'm from Jersey, so I was a Nets fan, and then they moved to Brooklyn, and now I'm just kind of floating in the wind.
Dude, I just like great sports.
I like a good game. I like a good match. That's when I got into tennis, just because of sports, like the U.S. Open, like
it's great.
McEnroe. Like I just love a good match,
Right.
like the Yankee Dodgers rivalries back in the day. No, I hear you, man.
This is just one thing. My mother was an actress, and then my mother became a casting director, and I think somewhere genetically. Casting is like you have to find the right person for the right job kind of thing. So like I'm watching the Knicks yesterday, and I've seen Fournier, this new player they have, Nathan Fournier. Like I've seen this guy, and I was like, he's going to be pretty good. He was on the Olympic team. Mm-hmm. Dude, in the overtime, sets up from 3 points, in. Second shot, sets up from 3 points, in. Third shot, in. 3 in a row. And then it went into double overtime. In the second session, he hits another 3-pointer. So he had like 32. I think Julius Randle had 36 or something like that. But it's like, thank God we got this dude. But I saw it early on, meaning like whatever my mother, the casting thing.
Yes,
like
I
could tell, like they're making a big deal about Kemba Walker because he's like our savior.
Right.
He disappeared in the overtime. I didn't even see the guy.
Right.
But it's interesting to watch sports. Sports for me, it's like, when somebody's that talented, you just pray they don't get injured. But they all get injured.
They all get injured.
Yeah.
So what's your you're home watching a game. What are you drinking and eating?
Well, I'm a devout Jet fan. Okay. I actually do the VIP rooms at the MetLife for the Jets for many years now. It's something called the Green Room and Coaches Club and whatever. But anyway, I love a great chicken wing. I love bratwurst, sauerkraut. I never was a beer drinker, but I drink light beer because I can afford those calories, and light beer is good. I like light beer.
Well,
but
I mean, IPAs are so heavy now. They're so like, oh, these wines you can't see through them. They're all 8% alcohol,
and they're expensive.
And they're like, what a business!
Yeah.
Fucking start your own beer. People, again, new thing, just a crazy graphic on the label. 4-pack, $25. It's water, hops, and so
It's nuts.
It's nuts.
It's nuts. But yeah, I mean, I eat typical food, sports food.
That's cool.
I love chili. I like things in a bowl. I like rice, with some kind of
something on it.
Something spicy and delicious.
I didn't eat rice for a while. I was trying to do that whole keto.
Well, you're
thing.
in good shape. You're in good shape.
But then I was like, I love rice.
Yeah, rice.
I mean, it's so
brown
comforting.
rice.
It's so comforting. It really is.
Yeah, and cheese. See, for me, the cheese thing is like, I eat cheese every day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I eat cheese.
So, since you mentioned cheese, we're having some fun. This is a great conversation with Drew. That's legend. Like I said, I did a video. Like real people talk. Feel, oh, this person's a legend, but like all your restaurants still. I mean, that's legend, right? So you've had to have some few good meals. All right, but let's go. Let's start with pizza.
Yeah.
All right. So pizza, New Haven pizza versus New York pizza.
So that's interesting. So. The one thing I find from Instagram, because I really believe like when you see something that looks good, you want to pursue it.
Yep.
So Instagram has sort of motivated me, especially during COVID, to get as much pizza as possible. So there's a few places. I have done these trips to Sally's and Pepe's. Pepe's treated me very nicely because I was just waiting outside like any person before they open, and the guy comes out and he goes, "Are you Drew Nieporent?" I was like, "How did you know who I was?" I don't remember how he knew, but I thought that was excellent. Not so much the place in Yonkers. I think they have a Pepe's.
That's when you brand. They have several now. They got one in the casino, but like you got to go down to Worcester Street.
The New Haven thing. God bless New Haven. If they want to say, like, what's the name of the guy who comes out of the store and hey, Rocco, the rules. One bite. He says one bite and then he takes 12 bites and he gives it a score, right? What's that guy?
Barstool Sports.
I mean, this guy's. I hate everything about him. He's from Boston. He's a Trump Fox guy. He's like the worst thing on the planet. But with pizza, he's chosen the one thing. I swear to God, when I tell you this, I've never had a bad slice of pizza.
Yep.
I mean, I've had maybe less interesting pizza, but I've never had a slice where I can't eat that.
Yeah.
So So here's the best pizza, and I really mean this. He was my chef years ago. His name is Frank Fasinelli, and his partner is Frank Castronovo. They opened Frankie Sputino in Williamsburg, I think it was.
Okay.
And they're not as old as I am, but they're old. And they open F&F Pizza, and they go out and they get Chris Bianco from Arizona, who's the Bianco pizza out there is supposed to be the best in America. And they got the guy from Tartine in San Francisco to make the dough. So I go out there. I'm very skeptical. And I was during COVID, and online they had this pizza with red onions and chilies. Yeah. And I like red onions, but I don't necessarily like it on pizza. I got to say, it's like when I'm eating this pizza, I'm saying, this is good, man. I would go back, you know what I'm saying? And then Upside, there's a place called Upside on Spring Street. And they make a very good slice of pizza. But, sometimes, 2 days ago, I had a meeting on 34th Street. And there was a pizza place there. I was hungry.
Yeah. And
I go in there, and they treated me like dirt. I mean, they were, and how much is the pot? How much is it? $3.81. It's like, but I when I was in there, I was saying, this is actually not bad. I mean, it's like, I would come back to this place. So I think whether it's pizza or wine or good food, it's like when you're eating something and it's like, I would eat this again. Because I don't know about you, but when I go to a restaurant, I order the same thing over and over. Everything. Yeah. I don't care if I go there 10 times, I order the same thing.
I mean, that's pretty much my deal, too. We had Mark Iacono on last week, and it's interesting what you said. Like, he opened a pizza place because he loved slices when he was a kid. That's what hooked him. And he actually is opening a new slice place.
Right, he's got a slice place.
Yeah, but I go to my favorite Chinese restaurant, my local Chinese restaurant, and not even in my hometown anymore. And I order I order the same thing.
Yeah.
I order sweet and sour chicken.
So you had Mark Iacona on the podcast?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. See, this guy, he's genius.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's like he had the article in the New York Times, even, and I think he got shot or he almost, and then he was on the pizza show. I saw him on the pizza show.
Yep.
So today I'm looking at my Instagram.
Yeah, he was there with Mark and Pro and the guys from the Sopranos.
Steven is a good friend of mine.
Okay.
Steve Tribeca.
Yeah.
and Michael Imperioli, I'm very friendly with also. And he's there. And usually Steve tells me when he's going to go to these places, so he didn't say anything. So I got to figure out how they hook that up. They definitely ate on the arm. They didn't pay. I know that for a fact. But Steve and Michael Imperioli, that Talking Sopranos podcast is very popular. Because they've had all the ex-cast members on the show.
Yeah.
It does fantastic. And Steve, Steve fancies himself a foodie.
Yeah.
He had a sauce for a while. The sauce, I mean.
He had a sauce for a while.
He had a sauce for a while.
Let's just say
the
that.
Rayo sauce, though. Do you realize, women, right? My wife, right, goes to the market, buys the Rayo sauce. Okay, so how much does the Rayo sauce cost? The Rayo sauce costs $9.99.
I would say it's like $10.
Yeah, it's always $10. Now, the 360, the 360, I think, I forget it.
$365.
Yeah, what
at
is that?
Whole Foods. Yeah,
Whole Foods, right?
Going to Whole Foods.
You know how much that is? Same size, $1.99.
Yeah.
So it's like, what the hell are you buying this Rayo sauce? Well, it's better. I don't give a goddamn if it's better than $1.99 versus $9.99. You got to.
He's like, I run restaurants. We got costs here.
No, you have no idea. Like when I was a kid, I shop for my family.
Yeah.
Everything was like. I would I would never buy anything. And then, my wife would buy, turkey, sliced turkey, $6.99. Great. Then the next one comes in, it's $8.99. I said, man, it's the same turkey. Why are you paying $8.99? That bothers me. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't say my wife makes sauce. We don't use jar sauce in my house. She'll $1.99 get a can of tomatoes, garlic, crushed red pepper, and basil, and we're good to go.
That's all you need.
So. We talked about stadium food. We talked about pizza. What was
I had a restaurant, by the way, at Citi Field.
Okay,
for almost 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, but I saw that and I had two sets of notes, and that wasn't one set. It wasn't about. Oh, I know it's not your fault. No, that's me. I don't read.
You know what the worst thing was? So on the opening day, they said, "Are you going to carry Tom Seaver's wine?" Because Tom Seaver.
Oh, I know how. Yeah.
But the wine was ridiculous.
It's super expensive.
It was super expensive.
I had Harmon Skurnick on. They were courting to carry it, and
so
he said, Tom Seaver was a hero of mine, but the wine was a little too expensive.
Yeah. But you know
for what it was.
You know who was the big wine guy was Rusty Staub.
Okay.
Because he used to have in his restaurants, which were horrible, by the way, but he used to have always magnums. He always had big big formats in his restaurants.
So, what's your best ultra fine dining experience? Like Boulay? I mean, where?
I'm done with fine dining.
You're done with fine dining?
I'm not done with fine dining in Europe.
Okay.
I'll get dressed up. I mean, I'm wearing a suit today.
Yeah, it's first guest to have cufflinks and a suit on. Ever on
I
the podcast.
Swear when I tell you this. I think this is exactly what I wore to my daughter's wedding 3 weeks ago. I have not put on a suit in ages, and which is telling.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
Yep.
But I thought I was going to Danielle tonight for dinner. It was last night, so I screwed up. But anyway, the point is, I have always said this also. There's a facade in dining in New York, and I worked at the best French restaurants. Yep. I worked at La Grenouille and Le Périgord and La Réserve, and I saw the facade. We were dressed in tuxedos. You'd look up and down the customers. You made the customers dress up to go inside and eat. And now, go full circle, and the people coming in with the baseball caps turned around, shorts. I mean, it's it's insane. Yeah. One time at Montrachet, this is a true story, Michael Gross, who wrote on Notes on Fashion, he called me up and he said, do you have a... Oh, no. He was sitting in the dining room. A customer, just any customer, called me up and said, do you have a dress code? I said, yes. As long as the feet and the genitals are covered, everything's cool. And so this guy, he overheard me, and he writes in the New York Times, overheard the head waiter
Yeah.
of Montrachet, as long as the feet and the private parts, he cleaned it up.
Yeah.
But like, so I get a call from one of my customers. Do you know who said that? I said, why, David? He said, I would fire that guy if I found out who said that. He said, like, you know, because back in the day, people got dressed up to eat.
Yeah.
So, look, I don't like rules. In fact, Montrachet, you see, people don't realize it. Montrachet in 1985 was groundbreaking. The food was groundbreaking. The food compares with anything we're serving now. But it redefined fine dining. You didn't have to get all dressed up. And the waiters, instead of wearing white shirts, wore black shirts. And anyway, we started a wine program. And now I still have the same restaurant 36 years later. And to a certain extent, it's not called Montrachet, but guess what it's called? Betard Montrachet.
Yeah, Betard Montrachet.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
And it's and the food's great and the wine, you know. So anyway, the point is, it's like nobody cares.
Yeah.
You know, you were very kind. You say, "Oh, I'm talking to a legend." Yeah, you know, the legend in my own mind. I mean, it's like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I'm cool with that because it's like, you know, I don't need people to blow smoke. It's like I'm very happy. I've lived a great life. You know, and it's like, you know, but I like fine dining. I gravitate to fine dining, but they're all dead.
Yeah.
You know, Joel Robuchon, La Grenouille is like a sad story. These restaurants really don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, the grill, they're friends of mine. I love them dearly, but like, you know, slicing a piece of meat, tableside, that is not fine dining. I mean, you know, and if I've learned any lesson, you know what it is? Hot food hot, cold food cold. You got to get the food out of the kitchen fast, and if you know, like even yesterday at Madison Square Garden in the VIP rooms, they have this gorgeous prime rib of beef. So, okay, maybe the prime rib, which they're slicing, is not going to be hot. There's no element to keep it hot. But there's got a sauce right there. So I said, do you want sauce? And no, man, I don't eat sauce. I said, yeah. And the sauce was cold. So precision.
Yeah, precision.
Precision, hot food hot, cold food. The simple stuff. Like if my hamburger was cold, I'd be pissed off. You know, it's like, I look at things like that. That's just I believe my success is just because I care maybe a little bit more than everybody else. Maybe. I don't know. You know, caring, that's the first thing I ask my staff. I said, do you care? Care about what? Care about your fellow worker, care about the customer, do you care? They can't even figure that out. It's like, yeah, I guess I care. But anyway,
So,
what can I tell you?
man, that's awesome. This is one last question for you.
Okay. If I go to heaven, no.
And this is a tough question, and I know there's no best, but like, what was the bottle of wine that knocked your socks off? Like, what was a wine experience where you're like, wow, this is absolutely...
I was trying, you know, to get lucky with a girl that I liked. So I stole a bottle of 61 Margaux. You know, 61 Margaux was like out of Maxwell's Plum, you know, and I brought it home and I cooked rack of lamb and the whole thing went great. The wine was great, the food was great. I just didn't get laid, but that, you know, that was my route, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so that was, you know, so 61 Margaux sort of stands out. But I would say, I mean, lately,
Yeah.
like when I go to I've been invited to the reopening of Benno.
Okay.
I'll bring a bottle because I don't want if I'm friends and family, I don't want the restaurant to spend any money on me for the wine. Right. But I want a good bottle of wine, especially if it's, you know, Benno or Carne Mare or the place on 14th Street. What's the one David Kinch was cooking called Invectus or anyway. And like I opened a bottle of $500 bottle. I think it's $500 on our list, which is not that expensive, but of Betard Montrachet. 98, and it was awful. It was like, you know, so right.
There's a lot of pre-mocks going on with some of those 90 white bergs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was disappointing, but what followed it is like, honestly, I think it was a Premier Cru, Merceau, you know, a good grower, you know, small, and it was just delicious. You know, it's like, so I wine for me is like discovery. It's like every bottle. It's like I'll buy a case of, like I bought a case of this because my wife liked it, you know. But for me, I like to do a different bottle almost every night. and then just like discovery. And you could.
Yeah.
You could live the
Literally.
rest of your life drinking
You
different wine.
can never drink.
And by the way, I'm not impressed. I'm not like tomorrow night is the grand tasting at the Marriott.
Yep.
Have you ever attended that thing?
No.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that. But anyway, so there's like 200 wines.
Yep.
And like some amazing stuff.
Yeah, no, it's heavies.
It's and like it's the only event I think I can recall ever getting like a little drunk at because I don't.
Because there's not a lot of spitting going on when you got those.
No.
Exactly, right? There's certain tastings you're like, okay.
And it's like you're walking by all the California wines, all the Australian wines, and it's like,
yeah.
get me the French guys, and they have Corton Charlemagne and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, so then I'll drink when it's on somebody else's nickel, I'll drink Bordeaux.
Yeah, I had the chief revenue officer for 100 Acre, and he said 100 Acre is like the best bottle of wine you could drink on someone else's dime. And, he sells it, but he's like, if you're on the list, it's $6.50 a bottle. I'm sure it's 3 times that in restaurants. Like, he said, but it's a great drink on someone else's dime.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
Well, Drew Nieporent, thank you so much for coming in today. My God, you have so many stories. You're awesome for doing this, and man. Where can people find out what you're doing? Is there a website? Can we blow up your Instagram? What's your Instagram? Where can they find out about your group?
My Instagram is under my name. Obviously, Betard and Tribeca Grill and Crush. Everybody has a website. Maybe not that great, but they have a website. We're not really good at promoting ourselves, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Nobu, of course, sort of exists on. I mean, it's just the most popular.
It's in its own orbit.
It's really extraordinary, with a very bad wine list, by the way. But I'm going to try to see if I can improve that because I used to be involved, but they kind of hosed me about that. But but Instagram is kind of
cool.
I'm sort of stuck on like the same number of followers for whatever reason.
No, you're about to blow up for sure.
Yeah, after today.
After
right.
today, I do a lot of work on Instagram.
That's it.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for being here, Drew. Until next time, cheers to the Mavericks, philosophers, deep thinkers, and of course, all you wine drinkers. Peace.